We are back again with you for the new episode of Terrazzo Talks here in Dubai. Also, a very warm welcome and greetings from the United Arab Emirates to all our viewers from around the world. I'm Labraj Talwar, the Managing Director of the Terrazzo Group. Today, we sit down with Osman Sultan, the recently retired founding CEO of Do, and Mudassir Sheikha, the co-founder and CEO of Careem. We will discuss all things technology and the future of technology business in the region. I have the pleasure today to introduce Osman Sultan, who was previously founding CEO of Do and presently founder and chairman of Ficta Tech Advisory Services. As the founding CEO of Do since 2005 in the UAE and the founding CEO of Egyptian company for mobile services Mobanil in Egypt from 1998 to 2005, Osman Sultan has set during the course of his career several strategies translating the profound transformations that the telecom and information sectors have been creating in our lives. As an influential figure and mentor in the telecom sector, he is proud to have groomed close to 20 talented individuals who became CEOs of various operations across all continents. Osman is a visionary leader and a notable public speaker in the field. His distinguished achievements ranked him as one of the most powerful executives in the telecoms industry in the world, twice on GTBP Power 100 list in both 2010 and 2011. And the list goes on and on. We're greatly privileged to have a person as experienced as Osman for our session today. A very warm welcome to you, Osman.
Thank you.
I would now like to hand over to my co-moderator, Yuvraj, who is the Business Development Director of the Terrazzo Group, and will be introducing the second panelist, Mr. Mudassir Sheikha. Over to you, Yuvraj.
Thank you. Hello to everyone from all over the world. My name is Yuvraj Talwar, and I'm the Business Development Head of the Terrazzo Group. I'm extremely excited to be here with you all once again today on the 5th edition of Terrazzo Talks. That was a brief hiatus from our previous talk. I think it's safe to say that today is probably one of our most awaited sessions. We have fantastic panelists in Osman Sultan and Mudassir Sheikha. I have the privilege of introducing Mudassir Sheikha, though I've not had the privilege of meeting you, Mudassir. I'm honored to be on the show with you. Mudassir Sheikha is the co-founder and CEO of Careem, MENA's largest ride-sharing service that is based out of Dubai. I'm sure you've heard of. Careem became the first ever unicorn exit in the country and the region, and it was acquired by international rival Uber for $3.1 billion in 2019. So a massive congratulations to you, Mudassir, on your achievement. You're a true pillar of hope for every other tech entrepreneur in the region. Just to enlighten you on Mudassir's life prior to Careem, he spent a decade in Silicon Valley building technology startups, where he was the co-founder of Device Anywhere, a mobile testing and monitoring startup, which was eventually acquired by Keynote Systems. He has an academic background in computer science and economics from Stanford and USC. And Mudassir, at some level, I think that makes you and I rivals, since I'm a UCLA boy. That's a conversation for another time. The topic of today is how will technology shape the UAE going forward? As usual, the format is that we will pose 5 to 6 questions that we believe will bring to light some of the key issues surrounding technology in the UAE and the region. And we will then, after our questions, open up the floor to the audience and pose them to both Mudassir and Osman. So with little further ado, I think I'm ready to ask my first question, and I'll pose this to you, Mudassir. How does the UAE's private sector fare with its ability to innovate, implement, and roll out new technologies at scale relative to the rest of the developed world?
Yeah, thanks Yuvraj for having me on the show, and nice to meet you, even though you went to UCLA. Look, I think to build a technology and to scale it, you need talent, you need outstanding talent. And one thing that has happened in the UAE over the last 20 years has been an incredible buildup of world-class infrastructure that has created a value proposition for top talent to be in the UAE. So when we try to recruit people from San Francisco, from London, from elsewhere, and tell them we have a role in Dubai for them, they don't hang up the phone on us. They take a conversation. The Dubai brand is attractive. They want to be a part of this ecosystem. So we've been able to attract talent to come and work with us here in the UAE, and that talent then builds technology, does innovation, and then you also need a different kind of talent to then scale things to the rest of the region, because Dubai and UAE itself is not a very big market for most technology startups. So very soon you have to look outside the UAE. Typically, you start with Saudi, then you think of Egypt, Jordan. We went to Pakistan as well, and even to do that kind of expansion at scale, you need people that have done these things before. So that talent again is something that you can attract in a place like Dubai, and then can task them with making sure that these things are done in a consistent and professional way. So the talent is here, and if the talent is not here, the talent is willing to be here, and we haven't had any challenges making Dubai as a hub of innovation for us and exporting that to the rest of the region.
Got it. Thank you for that. Osman, do you have anything you'd like to add to Mudassir's answer?
No, I would maybe back up what Mudassir, and hello Mudassir, long time, we haven't seen each other really. Pleasure to have you here. I'm as well privileged to be on this panel, and hello to everyone all over the world. I can see a lot of names, some of them I have the privilege to know. So to back what he's saying in a format, there are 3 indicators now that have been produced since years, and that are measuring in a scientific way how countries are ready for the various components that you need. And getting first one is the Network Readiness Index. We in telecom, we have been, tracking this since some time. And in that, the UAE has always been ranking on top in the Arab countries. And the interesting thing, as well, to build on what Mudassir said, for startups, the UAE as a scale is probably not enough if you really want to scale up quickly. So Saudi, Egypt, Morocco, you go to countries with large population, Pakistan, of course, and the region. So that this Network Readiness Index have been showing systematically that in terms of infrastructure, the connectivity infrastructure, these countries have been progressing. So that's one. The UAE being always on top in this region, because there is regional clustering. There is regional clustering. The second, on top of this, is what they call the Global Innovation Index. We know that because at some point when I was in Du for a couple of years, we were one of the sponsors in that, believing really that innovation is a build-up, is really an outcome of input, what authorities, the components that they put, and then the output that you have. And paradoxically, in the UAE, you have always seen the input rank has always been better than the output. I think this is changing because now we are seeing the Careem story and other stories that we are seeing around us are putting the country in a better shape. In the last one, and this is what Mudassir started with, and I would as well should have started with, the new index is the Global Talent Competitive Index, where it's difficult to have a ranking. And I have the privilege of being on the advisory board of an institute that is managing these indexes, coming with the methodology, working with international organizations, because For some of them, you had at some point the World Economic Forum, you had institutions like INSEAD, Cornell University, etc., participating in the setting up of the equation and methodology. It's really a scientific approach. So if you add the infrastructure, the ecosystem for innovation in terms of readiness for doing business, in terms of facility for creating companies, etc., 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 and the talent, the combination of this actually is measuring the future readiness of every country. How much, how ready a country is in moving into this future. And we know, all of us, that this future is going to look totally differently. I think that we haven't yet, all of us, really measured and quantified the impact of COVID. And I'm not saying only the pandemic. Of course, we are now looking at the impact, the economical impact post-COVID, but as well, this new business as non-usual, if you want, that we have to cope with. We are witnessing debates and panels like this and webinars like this about the relation with work, the relation with the workspace, the capability of having talent decentralized. If you, I was one day in a panel like this with other CEOs, and one just said, you know what, we are discovering that we can be much more efficient. This is something we have been, I'm sure Mudassir, myself, have been kind of advocating for this, because this is part of our business. When we were saying to people, you know what, you can do a lot of things digitally. I mean, Mudassir built his entire story around, you know, don't call a cab or don't use, you just have it on the tip of your fingers, you use an app, and your experience and life becomes much more easier and smoother. So we have been pushing for this in the connectivity. We've been saying digital is going to transform everything we touch in our lives. But people discovered that, you know, like forced, not only by conviction, but they discovered that the guys can be at home. And so if they discovered that their accountant can stay in his GLT apartment and doing the job, and most of the time, then he can think that, oh, but by the way, this accountant who is from India or who is from Egypt can be in Egypt somewhere or in India somewhere. So on the relation and finding talent, that is a crucial point that Mudassir touched on. I believe that this is a new equation that we'll have to build completely. I do not have the precise answers. And I think we all need, with this real disruption that the world lives, we all need to be very humble and, you know, start asking the right questions on the go.
Right. For someone who's not in the startup space, I have two questions from Mudassir and I guess Osman, to follow up what you just said. You know, there's a lot of innovation that comes out of semi-government companies, do potentially being one of them, Imar, as well, that's constantly spoken about. Does that ever create a disincentive, do you think, for people to innovate, to want to disrupt industries, given the sort of funding that semi-government organizations have backing them? Is that something that ever creates a disincentive? And in addition to that, does the absence of sort of a robust Western-style Title 11 bankruptcy law, given the risks inherent with starting a startup, also act as a disincentive for innovation potentially in the region?
The second question, I will, you know, I will pass it like you pass a rugby ball, or to Mudassir, because I think he's better placed in that. He is a startup. I mean, very often I was referred to as a startup person, and I always said, no, it's not true. I mean, you are in a startup when you, like our friend here on the panel, you put everything you have, you put your own money, your own time, your own work. I was an executive. Yes, I started companies, but when Do started, we had a start of 4 billion dirham. I think a lot of startups will have to would like to have that. We started with a capital of 4 billion dirham. Mobinil before that, we started with hundreds of millions of dollars in capital. So I don't really, and I was not myself in the entrepreneur position. I would love, I mean, I had the privilege of being in contact and being, always in interaction with the entrepreneur ecosystem. I sit on boards of some entrepreneur accelerations, but let's be very, I have to be very humble. I have not been an entrepreneur in my career. That's a fact. So I cannot take that. You have one of the most brilliant in the region next to me on the screen. So please direct these questions to him, because he showed that, and his track record speaks for him. As far as the question that you have asked, the thing in the UAE, which is quite unique, is that in every country, be it in Europe and in the Arab world, you will see that always the government sector, in the way they provide services, they are lagging behind private sector. And very often private sector is trying to push to get this government sector to implement innovative ways of interacting with citizens and the people at large to provide service. In the UAE, it's totally the opposite. Every time myself, as a person living in the UAE, I used to go and interact with government services. I was impressed by how more advanced in dealing. I mean, I don't know if you try recently to do whatever you want to do. You go to the land department, you want to get a new contract. Every time you see that they have automated more, that they have digitized more, that you have, we had the privilege when I was in Baddu to be the partner, the technology partner of the Dubai Smart City. And the Dubai Smart City is one of the most comprehensive ambitions of a smart city in the world. And we can get back to this when we speak about, innovation and how societies are moving going forward. But I can tell you that the thrive that people in government, they want to be always in this competition among government service to really, because you have this at the top. At the top, you have the willingness that we want to innovate, and innovation has to be our trademark, and we have to stamp everything we do with innovation. That helps a lot when you are in the private sector and partnering with this. So probably Mudassir will have a lot to say, but from the point of view of a real startup.
Sorry, I was on mute. I just want to sort of reinforce what Osman was saying on government services. All of us lived in different parts of the world. And when you interact with the government services here in the UAE, it's really a breath of fresh air. It's remarkable how efficient these things are here compared to elsewhere. Now, to the question that you asked, Yuvraj, on semi-government and disincentive, it has been a challenge to some extent, and not from a funding standpoint per se, because look, my belief always has been that if you're going after a big opportunity, and if you assemble the right team and you start showing traction, there is enough capital in the region and outside the region. So I don't think capital itself is an issue. Where it does become a bigger challenge is on the regulatory front, where certain regulations just prevent the private sector to do things. So and things are getting better. So for example, when we first started as a ride-hailing business, there were challenges that we had operating in this region, right? Operating in Dubai, operating in Abu Dhabi. We were shut down in Abu Dhabi for some time as well. And oftentimes it seemed that the regulator owned some transportation assets themselves and was basically trying to protect those assets. Now, things have really improved since those days. If you spend some time in Dubai, you will see that we've done a partnership with the RTA, and there's a big focus overall from the government to do these public-private partnerships that bring the best of the private sector along with the assets of the public sector and provide services, world-class services to the citizens of this country. So alhamdulillah, things are going in the right direction. But on the regulatory front, there are still things that can be improved. On the fintech front, there are regulations that do not allow anyone in the UAE to do certain things that are only allowed to privileged groups. Um, there are still laws and regulations that we should look at to encourage more startups to more readily tap into public markets. One of the only ways that startups in the region can currently exit is through acquisitions or through IPOs in foreign exchanges, which there is no precedent of, and hence it's a bit difficult. But our exchanges still have relatively traditional metrics to measure businesses, and exits are a challenge. But I believe that a lot of smart people are looking at this topic, given everything else that's happening in the world, and bit by bit we are moving in the right direction. On your question on the bankruptcy law or the lack of it, I don't have a lot of personal experience with it. I didn't feel discouraged to do a startup in the UAE as a result of that law not being in place, but it is often cited as a reason why people do not jump and do startups. But there is a cultural element here as well, which is outside of the legal framework part of it, which is as a culture, we are not as forgiving of failures. There is in other parts of the world, failure can be a badge of honor. Failure can be seen as a lot of learning that can actually help you in your next venture. Whereas in our societies, sometimes failure is seen as a really bad thing, and you get ostracized from social circles, and people start looking at you in a different way. So there is a cultural and mindset element to it as well that we need to overcome, in addition to some of the laws that may be coming in the way.
So just going back to what you previously said about the the disincentive and potentially you now partnered with RTA and so on and so forth. Do you see that as an inherent risk going forward? Is that something that could change? Is that sort of government element something that you think that poses an inherent risk to the business going forward in the next 10, 20, 30 years? No. A change of mind, a change of law. Is that something that sort of
not we don't have that perception. We view UAE as a very stable place with the rule of law and the sanctity of contracts and agreements. It's a joint venture that we've done with the RTA. So we are blessed to be in that position. Yeah,
got it. So I think we're ready to move to the second one, unless anyone has any additional
on that, Yuvraj, if you allow me.
Sure.
It's as Mudassir said, it's really a mindset. The risk that you are referring to could be that sometime, and we see this in some other countries, is that I'm doing a joint venture in the beginning, but once things are settled, I can do it myself. And we have seen in a lot of joint ventures, I've seen in Egypt, I've seen in other places in the Arab world, that temptation. So, it's working well, it's making a lot of money, I can do it myself. Why? I think that there is a mindset, and this is really, we experience this in the UAE, that bring the people of expertise, partner with people of expertise, and more, you see a conversation within the government that says, okay, should that be the role of government, or should this happen by private sector or through JV with private sector? So that needed conversation is happening, and I would say is happening really on, as Mudassir said, with respect that we want to be, by the people in charge in the UAE, we want always to be a country where the rule of law is there, the respect of contract, because part of the story, the narrative in the UAE is, I want to attract investors. I mean, the UAE has been built progressively on attracting flow. It started with the flow of goods and merchandise, the creek, etc., through really a very structured approach. Then the flow of people, and you don't just bring people because you have a nice airport or you have an airline company. You need to have a reason for these people. So all these clusters that were built, Dubai Media City, Dubai Internet City to start with, Dubai Knowledge Village. I mean, the theme cities and centers of activities. In addition to this, you bring people, you bring their families, so ensuring that there is a whole environment for this to happen. So this is then a flow of financial flows, attraction of financial flows. The IFC, the stock market, you know, in Abu Dhabi, the global market that happened. So this is always a constructed process to make sure that these flow have all the reasons. And the umbrella of that, this is a country where investors can trust the rule of law. This is a country where investors can trust that contracts will be respected, that any conflict in contracts will be, whether it's the arbitration process or whether going to courts in the UAE, it's taken very seriously. So that, as well as a dimension that is comforting what Mudassir was saying.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Mudassir, do you have anything to add? Do you want to?
No, nothing to add on this one, but let me tell you an interesting story that I just heard this morning. So we just hired a VP of engineering from a big tech company in the US. And he just moved here this weekend from Seattle. And we asked him, when is the family moving? What's the family's view on the move? And he said the kids are actually quite excited to move to Dubai. And we're like, okay, why are the kids excited? Because it must be challenging for them to leave their friends behind, to leave their school behind. And his response was, there's a cool factor about Dubai.
Yeah.
So just to give you a sense, right? This guy is in Seattle, right? Working for one of the largest tech companies globally. And he's just moved to Dubai. And even in that part of the world, there is that reputation that Dubai is a cool place to be. So it really goes to that point that we've been saying about, you know, there is an amazing value proposition for top talent, which has been built over the last 20 years. And, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, once you build that value proposition for talent to happen overnight. Now that we've had a few successes in the last 2-3 years in the technology entrepreneurship space, I do expect this journey to build momentum, and more people, inshallah, will come to this part of the world with the right experience, with the right expertise, and we'll start building more and more technology that solves the problems of this part of the world in a more tailored way than might be solved by outsiders.
So as you just recounted that story, I've got lots of questions. So we're not even getting to the ones that we've actually set out to ask. But I just have one question, and I guess this applies to both of you. So, you know, Dubai's always been hailed as a sort of a marketing machine. It has developed such a strong brand, internationally recognized, as you just recounted, by your new employees, two children. What sort of lessons can you learn and implement, and have you implemented in Careem and Do? Because both are very well recognized brands. Do is a telecommunications brand, and obviously Careem is a ride-sharing platform. So what lessons have you learned? Any lessons from the sort of entrepreneurial nature, agile nature of the Dubai government to sort of market it the way they have?
Osman is a much closer student of this topic, I'm sure, than I am.
If I want to build on this, we had a lot of pressure because of this. We knew that when you come to a market as a new player in telecom, and mind you, telecom is something that is very close to everything that you do. I had a guy one day telling me, you know, I can go out from home forgetting my son that I have to take to school, but I can't forget my mobile. I will immediately realize. So that's a different debate, whether it's fortunate, unfortunate. But, and we knew that being in the UAE, the new player, the new kid around the block, we had to focus on the experience. We had to come with something new. We had to be different. Our brand, you know, bear in mind that in 2005, the brands in the telco sector were always having Calm, Mob, something like that. You know, there was still, so having something called Do, and totally, the colors were different, the way, so this perception, I want to use a word that Mudassir, that it's cool, was a very important thing for us to have, because Dubai was perceived as being cool. The UAE in the region was having this reputation driven by the Dubai story and narrative. It's cool. So we needed to align to this. You cannot be a traditional player, etc., when you are in a vibrant city, like, you know, in 2005, 2006, everybody was coming here. It was, you know, prior to the 2007-8 global economic crisis, there was this vibe that existed. So we needed to have, and we needed then to continue this. We needed to continue this because then you had the story of the smart city, everything smart, all these buzzwords that you have around you today, you know, where we are at the heart of all this, the Internet of Things, big data, blockchain, artificial intelligence. So on all these fronts, you needed to show something, you needed to show a present, you needed to have a story, and not only a story because the narrative is not enough. You needed something that showing that you are going in these areas. So that's the consequence of being, you know, part of that momentum that you are talking about.
Very interesting. Got it. Mudassir, anything to add from Careem's perspective on this?
Look, the one thing that we are inspired most by Dubai is ambition. I think there are many quotes of His Highness on ambition, and we actually read them out from time to time in our leadership meetings. Nothing is impossible. We competed with one of the best funded startups globally, and survived and succeeded. And now we want to become the digital platform for this region in the form of a super app that makes daily life for people as easy as possible so they can realize their potential. So we are inspired by the imagination of Dubai's leadership, by their ambition, and by their very strong ownership of their own destiny. And yeah, we take inspiration from it.
Got it. Got it.
So this takes us to our next question. In fact, a lot of the matter has already been covered in the answers both Osman and Mudassir have given. But I'll still move on to the next question, which is, Careem has obviously become a giant in the ride-sharing industry. And Do, of course, is one of the largest telecom providers in the region. As ex-CEO of Do and co-founder of Careem, what segment of technology is set for growth in the region over the next 3 to 5 years? Would you like to start, Osman?
Yeah. Yes, of course. Now, would it be a boring answer if I say everything that is every sector of technology that is going in the direction of the needs of the world post-COVID pandemic, in my opinion, and I wouldn't be really reinventing the wheel if I say, in my opinion, is set to grow. Is set to grow. I'm doing this. Countries are going, whether we're talking the Western world, whether we're talking in our region, in a specific economic situation that will have a long-lasting impact. So how government are going to manage that? And that lead me to think that the technologies that are going to offer a way, offer solutions for helping government, enterprises, even individuals to cope with this better, are going to be successful, are set to grow. It might be a trivial answer. I apologize if it's not something very sophisticated, but it seems to be a very direct consequence. You know, we are seeing more and more platforms on e-learning developing faster, interest by investors on that. And we all know, we all know that today there are limits of what's happening. Is it totally efficient, the hybrid system between online and physical presence? Is there a way to make this a little bit more efficient through some creativity and some innovation on technology innovation, on the application itself? I'm sure I can see these applications. I'm sure that something can be done to combine this things related to health, things related to telemedicine, things related in how you want to move. Now, it doesn't go without opening new conversations on what kind of societies we will have. We are hearing today that, okay, technology, but what about the human relation that we used to have? What about people? Are we going to go into a world that we don't want to see? Are we going to somewhere where we don't want to see because of that paranoia we have and using just the use of technology? I'm fascinated by this debate that is associating, you know, technology and the social effect. And on that, back to the UAE, on that, I want to highlight that, and I keep highlighting this because I think really that we're not giving it enough, we're not underlying it enough. When His Highness Sheikh Mohammed set the ambition for the Dubai Smart City, he said, we want to have the smartest city in the world. But he added, from the beginning, he said the smartest and the happiest city in the world. So it's like you need not only to run after and use whatever technology offer, if you want it to be the happiest, there are conversations that, in my opinion, are missing all over the world today. When it comes to AI, when it comes to big data, the use of data, privacy, etc. Conversations that are not, in my opinion, happening properly or deeply enough in order to allow us to move and to define what good looks like tomorrow. We don't know. It's good. It's okay if we don't know, but at least we need to have the proper conversations among stakeholders that are new stakeholders. What good looks like tomorrow, so we can define what use of technology and how we will use properly technology.
Thank you, Osman. Mudassir, what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, look, I think the broad direction is quite obvious, as Osman described. There's a big disruption that has been forced on humanity, and life as we know it is going to evolve and change, and it creates some losers as businesses that will get impacted negatively, but it also creates a lot of new opportunities for businesses to figure out what the new needs are and start serving those needs in the best possible way. So so within that theme, I think, not to sort of repeat what's already been said on things like education and healthcare, but the one thing that we are quite focused on is the adoption of digital for commerce. If you look at the region today, or if you look at the region pre-pandemic, about, I think, $1 trillion of consumer spend, only 2 to 3% of that was happening through digital platforms. Today, that number is already at 5%, according to estimates. And that number is growing at a much, much faster pace. And this number is still way lower than what you find in places like China and even the US today. Those are in the 20% plus range. Now, to make this whole transition happen from offline, where all of us go to the shops or go to the malls and buy things, to online, where we spend time in our living rooms ordering things, requires a lot of, it's a whole value chain that needs to come together to deliver it. You need companies that will acquire customers, create awareness, and get people onto their platforms. Then these companies need a lot of suppliers that will start putting their goods and services online. And then you need a pretty significant enabling infrastructure to make this whole thing happen, which includes logistics, which includes payments, which includes analytics, and so on and so forth. So, you know, there's a whole set of things that will need to be done for this migration to happen in our region in the same way that it happened in other places. And it's going to happen much faster because of COVID. So we can expect a lot of growth in everything that supports that migration. There's one other thing, and Usman touched on it when he was answering the first question, which is the whole relationship with work. And something very strange happened as all of us got locked up at homes, and we asked our staff to not come to the office. You know, after the first couple of months of just being in shock and adjusting to the new reality, a lot of our people started mentioning that they're starting to become more productive working from home, where there is less distraction. They don't spend as much time on the roads commuting. And overall, they found that setup to be superior, if I may use that word, to what was happening before. So after almost 6 months of collecting a lot of data, doing a lot of focus groups, iterating the way that we work, 2 weeks ago, we announced that we will become a remote first company, meaning that colleagues at Careem no longer need to come to the office to do their work. Now, they may come to the office and we'll keep the offices open because they may not have the right setups at home, right connectivity, right infrastructure. We know that in places like Egypt and Pakistan, people don't always have the right spaces at home. Families are large. So in those cases, people can still come to the office and work from the office. And there might be some activities that require physical interaction to get the best output. But for the most part, you know, most of us are very productive and can do most of the things that we do from home and still be employed. So this is another big shift that is happening. And we actually believe that this is also going to create a lot of disruption and opportunities because all of a sudden there are different needs that need to be catered for this to happen successfully at scale. So yeah, in addition to what everything that Usman said, there is a offline to online migration, and there is this whole shift in the way that we work that creates disruption and opportunities.
Let me give on the relation with work two impact that you wouldn't. First, and again, as I said, I'm now in France. I'm following a little bit. It's a different dynamic, you know. It's a European country, so we used to have congestion in terms of real estate. The demand was in the immediate skirt around Paris. The reorganization of work is shifting this. A lot of families are moving to really more countryside, which is 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers. And the guy is having a better quality of life for the family, but willing in the 1 day or 2 days he needs to go to the office to make, because most of the days of the week he is in a different environment. That's the first. The second impact, and you said it absolutely, we know that not everyone has at home a place to do the online working. I just heard that a lot of small hotels that are impacted by the lack of travelers, the lack of tourists, and that are really living an occupancy rate that is threatening their sustainability, are now proposing this and proposing workspace. So you can go next to your home, you have a hotel, you can have it, and it's totally a different cost. They are doing, there is a new ecosystem. You can go, you can work for the online from next to your home. And if you don't have space, and then the other time you can commute, go to your, so it's impacting whether the real estate, it's impacting the hospitality sector, it is probably impacting your sector, Mudassir. I had a conversation with an Uber driver. I'm sorry, there is no Careem here, but this is, I'm moving constantly with Uber. I'm having conversations. I'm seeing how this is, of course, they are impacted because there are less people, there is less demand, etc. But everybody is readjusting. Everybody is readjusting. It's fascinating. And I think we all need to have this willingness to say, okay, there is a new situation, there is a new normal. How can we be creative and work out of that?
And Osman, to what you mentioned, when this pandemic hit, we heard from our captains or drivers that, of course, there isn't enough work. And we had a small delivery business that was doing food delivery, and that has scaled up rapidly in the pandemic. And what we then started doing was, hey, if you don't have people to move around, you can start doing deliveries. So again, to the adaptation and adjustment that you speak about, we've all had to sort of build technology, get people used to doing different things with their assets. And now, I don't know what the latest number is, a large majority of our deliveries are being done by captains that were previously moving people.
Oh, wow.
I told you in that day where we met in my office that I was impressed by your ability to adapt to different ecosystems and the way you think on that. And this, again, in this pandemic, you did it. I told you that, if you remember. I gave you this compliment. I'm reiterating because I see how Careem changed, and you, of course, people are not going out, but they are getting their things. So moving this, and that allowed you actually, this is what I call, we have all to readapt. Well done.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna jump to the last question we have in the interest of time. And it's a question that I've always wanted the answer to. So how important is it to have a computer science technology background when founding a technological company? I feel like a lot of people today wish they could have had a tech background, education maybe passed for them, and now they can't pivot to that. But they may have an idea that could be the next Careem of their niche or whatever it may be. How do they go about that without and add value at the same time and not just hire the computer software engineer? What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, look, so I had a computer science degree, so I got lucky.
That's why I mentioned that.
Early on. But I think, as probably Usman will attest, having the curiosity and this mindset of continuous learning is more important. And especially when you sort of take the plunge and try to do something on your own, the journey is more challenging on multiple dimensions than just technical skills. So you have to learn so many other things very, very quickly that it's a broader topic of being able to learn things quickly and put them into practice. Now, in technology, frankly, these days, even if someone didn't go to college, they can still learn many things online. Again, you just need that mindset, you need the initiative. You need to be able to plunge yourself into it and figure it out. And at Careem, at one point, we were running short of data scientists, and we could not hire them fast enough outside the region and bring them to Dubai. So we started a data science academy. And a lot of our people that were doing operations in different cities started going through that data science academy and started becoming data scientists. So the point is, you can definitely learn these things over time. But I do find there are a lot of successful entrepreneurs that did not have a computer science degree, and it's totally doable. But having just some understanding of how technology is built definitely gives you a leg up. definitely gives you an insight that can make you more effective when building these type of businesses. So if you don't have the background from college, it's never too late. Go to Coursera, take some courses, start learning, and like anything else, figure it out and keep moving.
Got you. Got you. Usman, anything to add?
Yes, yes. You know, I always say I'm an engineer, but by accident. And it's true. I'm an engineer, but believe it or not, I'm not a telecom engineer. I have a degree in material engineering, nothing to do with telecom. And I started my career in an era where in telecom that used to be big beasts, government owned, monopoly minded, all the all the CEOs and the top executives were telecom engineers. And these guys, they didn't need to think about things like customer experience or thinking about what the customer, making the journey easier, because it was simple. There was no choice. Then things evolved. Then the internet players came to the zoological territory of telcos, and that disruption was huge, and they didn't realize. So we started seeing a new breed of people that come from a different background. I started my background in customer interfacing. I started all my career in customer interfacing. So I claim that probably that gave me an edge on pure telecom engineers. Of course, I could understand the technology. I had this background in engineering. I have an engineering degree, so I could understand. But it's more important to have an idea today of what an ecosystem means. It's more important to have a mindset of an architect rather than to have a mindset of pure engineer, because you are constructing ecosystems that are multi-components, multi-stakeholders, multi-dimensions, and you have to think these and with a capacity of changing rapidly. These ecosystems are never stable, change quite rapidly. We have discussed and seen some examples of this. So this is the mindset that makes you, and more importantly, and I'll repeat this, and you said how important it is to have a background in technology. I dare to say having the right skills to deal with people, to deal with talents, to manage talent. If you want to be at the top of an organization, at the helm of an organization, you need to manage the right talents, because these talents, they have their the skills, they have their capabilities, but they have as well their shortcoming, and you need to be the person as a head of orchestra making all these all these guys and all these talents play together and get you the right outcome. And this is what I believe today successful leaders in organizations, whether successful entrepreneurs, they know how to manage properly the talent, how to anticipate, how to think what kind of talent is needed, and how to groom these talent. This is why I thank you, because Lovraj, when you said in the beginning, probably one of the things that I'm the most proud of in my executive life, and Lovraj, please stop saying I'm retired. I'm working more than I ever worked before. I'm just in a non-executive role. I would love to be a little bit more retired. So please, you make me feel.
I know you cannot retire. You cannot
No. I mean, but what I said is that I'm stepping down from an executive life. So one of the things that I'm most proud, more than the phenomenal results I did to shareholders and the market value, the billions of market valuation of the companies I founded and I was at the head of, is the people that, not only the one that became CEO, sometime I meet somebody in the mall or someplace in an airport, and this person say, maybe you probably don't remember me, but I have to tell you, you changed my life. That is something that I really am the most proud of. That is something that makes me feel so touched and so humbled. I think this is more and more what will make leadership in the coming, and not only in the enterprise space, not only in the business space, even in society, etc. The capacity of driving and inspiring people.
Well said. I fully endorse what you're saying because I face it in business myself every single day. The most important thing is managing people. You can have the best person in the world, but he needs to be managed. Absolutely.
So I'm going to jump. Sorry, go on.
No, carry on.
No, I'm just going to jump to the audience questions because there's around 360, and I'm just going to pick the first 3 that have come in on Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom. So the very first one is to Osman, and I'm just going to ask it in the order that they came in. So it's from John. Do you think the decrease in travel has affected data roaming revenue?
This question is typically to be addressed to the CEO of Do, and I'm not anymore the CEO of Do. It's not. I'm going to give part of the answer, but honestly, the question on roaming, etc., how it's impact, of course, generally speaking, it will impact, but I will not be more specific because it's not appropriate for me. That's a question that should be addressed to the CEO of Do.
Got it. Thank you. Second question for Mudassir, Eamon Blackwell. Having used the app a few times myself, I have to say I was extremely impressed with the efficiency of the app. I'm assuming Careem. My question is, most people in today's world think twice before using public transport due to refraining from making contact with anything or anyone. What and how have you ensured to maintain your standard of health and safety, especially through the pandemic across the region?
Yeah, Raj, I apologize, but unfortunately I have to leave after this question. But at a very, very high level, it was critically important for the business to ensure the safety of not just customers, but also captains in order for them to feel comfortable using our service. And we've done quite a few things, some that show up in the app, and there are others that are done operationally. So in the app, for example, you will get reminded to wear a mask. If you're not wearing a mask, the captain can ask you to leave and can cancel the ride. Same on the captain side, you don't wear if the captain is not wearing the mask, you have certain rights and you can exercise them through the app. And then all the cars are, of course, equipped with sanitizers. There are, there are instructions on how to basically sit in the car or not sit in the car. And then every day we ask captains to self-certify themselves to make sure they've done all the things that they were supposed to do as part of their login process into the app. And we've made it quite easy for customers to give us feedback when they find their rides less safe. And then as soon as those things come in, we react to them and make sure that actions are taken. So we've tried putting the right incentives and systems in place to crowdsource monitoring and then to take action based on it to make sure that rides remain safe and safe for everyone. There's a long list of things that one can open the app and click on the safety button that we have done to ensure the safety. So the comprehensive list should be in the app.
Got it. So thank you for that answer. And I'll wrap it up since you've got to leave with us, sir. Thank you so much, Osman, Mudassir, for joining us today. It's been a fantastic talk. It's been a real privilege to moderate it from my perspective. I've got a lot of value out of it. Everyone watching, please follow us, like us, subscribe us, the usual, on our social media channels. And over to you, Labraj, if you have anything to say, or anyone else.
Just want to thank Osman as well as Mudassir for being with us today. It was a real pleasure to have you both.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you soon again.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.